Good morning. So nice to chat with you today, Amy. Could you tell us a little bit about your nonprofit origin story?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on, Tasha. This is a great opportunity to chat. My name is Amy Petersen. I am based in Minnesota in the United States at the moment. Um, my origin story, I love how you phrase that. I am really a mission-driven, impact-oriented professional. I have about 15 years of experience in project and program management and organizational development, both in the for and nonprofit sectors. My work in the nonprofit sector has primarily been international, and I've had the opportunity as a consultant to work in a large variety of different models within that experience. So that includes working for really small community based organizations, all the way up to large international organizations that have a global reach. I've had the opportunity to live and work in East Africa and in Southeast Asia and the Middle East, and really learned a ton from that type of interaction and engagement with the communities where the work is being done. With my consulting experience, I've had a ton of different projects that I've collaborated on in really diverse sectors from education to healthcare, food security, technology, civil society, and youth engagement. So I've really had this fantastic opportunity to engage with and learn from people really in diverse sectors, diverse cultural backgrounds, diverse lived experience. And so it has really committed me to this social impact and nonprofit work. Currently, I am working slightly closer to home in a domestic capacity, working with justice system impacted youth and families, as
Mhm.
well as doing some consulting in the program design and evaluation for international work, so I can stay connected to that.
I think that's so fantastic. And what one thing you said that I think really stands out, and I've definitely felt it in my experience, is that exposure to global social impact work. I actually feel like it grips you in a different way sometimes than some of the obviously lots of domestic challenges at home. Social impact work is needed in any country at this point and
Mhm.
is absolutely propping up our entire social structure, even though we
Yeah.
maybe don't look at it that way. But I think that global view is so unique and almost gives a breadth to look at like innovation on a scale that
Mhm.
here at home we would look at it and go, "Oh, that's too hard. We won't touch
Mhm.
that, right? Without X amount of
Yeah.
resources." And I'm always so impressed with, people who you'd look at and go, "I don't know how this is accomplishable, but it happens and they make it happen." And I think it's incredible.
Mhm. Yeah, the community driven approach is always astonishing to me how effective it can be, because some of the struggles when it's a top down approach are like buy-in and getting people to do the stuff, right? Where you don't have those struggles when you're working more from a community driven approach. And it's always impactful to see that in practice.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So favorite thing, you have such a breadth of work in the space. What's your favorite part of working in social impact?
Yeah, when I first looked at this question, I read it as what was my favorite project. So then I was like going back in time to think about all the
Well, you can
projects.
do both. I will accept both. I will accept both.
Yeah, I know, but I was, I was reflecting on kind of what why I do this work and why I like this space. And primarily it is this opportunity to really meaningfully contribute to positive change. And that's on in an individual, a community, and all the way up to a systems macro level. And that really drives me and motivates me to stay kind of in that space where there are challenges sometimes. Another element of why I like this space is the people. Having a shared commitment and alignment on what we would like to see that future world look like is always really invigorating for me to continue to kind of dig in and do that work. And then, kind of finally, one of the things that I have found in my particular nonprofit experience, and I realize this is not universal, but there is, in my kind of work, there has been this commitment to change, right? We're trying to positively change some aspect of lived experience in my work. And within that, I have found people more ready, willing, eager to take that change to a systemic level and to think about, change from the micro to the macro as being necessary and urgent. Whereas sometimes I find kind of in the for profit space and in other sectors in the nonprofit space, a reticence to change. And I'm somebody who likes change, wants to be moving stuff forward, evolving, adaptive project and program management. So I like that component.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. It was kind of interesting recently. I had a few people reach out who had said, seen some of the stuff that you've been putting out on LinkedIn. And there are people who have always been in for profit and are around my age in their, early 40s, mid 40s. And they actually are going, I want to do something. I want to do something. Right. And how
Mhm,
does this space work? How do I get into it? How do I take my
mhm,
marketing background that is in for profit and translate it over to be resourceful to a social impact
mhm,
sector? And I don't know of like crib notes. How do you move? How do you move from for profit into nonprofit? It probably needs to exist if it doesn't already, but it's interesting to see people really looking at their careers and going, "What lasting impact do I leave
mhm,
there on the
mhm,
world?" And I do think there's a more of a desire, or a kind of people are coming back around to that desire for to see a change in the world, and it's not going to be necessarily just leaving their kids millions of dollars in the trust fund. They want to do something
mhm.
substantial.
And I think there's an element of kind of immediacy, right?
Yeah.
In the nonprofit work. It's and obviously not immediate and there's a lot of groundwork and all of that, but coming from a for-profit, particularly like a corporate model, where it is shareholder value, going into I'm actually, I'm putting out a social media, campaign that is going to bring in donations to help this family or this community. And that kind of connection is is really different and it can be really motivating and inspiring for people who want that that visceral connection to community again, which I think is kind of post covid, we're striving to find that again.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so love your favorite parts of the work. People is absolutely one of my favorite parts of being in the sector as well. What about the challenges? What are the things, whether it's at home, across the pond, in different locations, what do you see that are consistent challenges in the nonprofit space?
Yeah, this is such a fascinating question because everyone, well, I mean, there's a billion answers to this,
Yeah.
right? And thinking about kind of the themes of what are the challenges. For me, because of my international experience, I take a kind of global view. And also just personally, I'm very much a systems person, macro level. So I think on that kind of big level, and then I like to act on the micro because that's where you can kind of build the change, I think. But within kind of the challenges, I see a couple at the kind of global level that are driving challenges throughout both the global and the domestic, the localized nonprofit work. So one of those is just the vastness of the need.
Yeah.
Right. So, with the intersection of climate change, growing conflicts, and disease related crises, there is growing and evolving need. So where you have these kind of crises intersecting with maybe change driven migration, you have scarcity, which can lead to conflict or disease, right? So you have these pieces that are connecting each other and creating new types of need in different locations. Right. So some of the standards, how we solve things, aren't going to work as well because of these evolving modalities and intersection of crises. And
Yeah.
whenever you have vast, big, evolving needs, you're going to have a restriction and a tightening of the supply, right? Of the motivation, the enthusiasm, the donor dollars, right? So in that, when we're looking at these kind of global drivers that are coming all the way down to affecting, one individual's willingness to, donate to the local domestic violence shelter because they've already donated over here, right? So how that big picture can all the way go down to nonprofit, work across the spectrum, I think is this challenge that we have to continue to struggle with because there is no easy solution to this one, right? The need
Yeah.
is there, it's still there.
Yeah.
Another major challenge I see at the kind of global systems level, particularly in the international humanitarian and nonprofit work, is this struggle to repair the harmful and damaging legacies of some of the systems that do and have done this work.
Yeah.
Right. So thinking about trying to dismantle the colonial, the top down, the very West driven, the profit and power driven modalities of doing this work to change how we think about who the stakeholders are, how to engage the stakeholders, to transition from this top down approach to not just a buzzwordy locally led approach, but a really community driven assessment of the need, development of the solution, implementation of the solution, and also evaluation of the work so that the community and the affected people, the proximate leaders, are leading from beginning to end because
Yeah.
they're best placed to learn and implement the solution in a more effective way going forward. And I think this is just something that's talked about a lot in the sector, but there's still, anytime you have a major system, right? There is inertia, there's slowness to
Yeah.
change. There's incentives to continue as you are, right? So I think that is another struggle I see in the nonprofit sector that um yeah, I struggle with how to be an effective stakeholder in that sphere because it still is sitting on some of these legacy and harmful systems and institutions.
You yeah, I feel like you could run a master class on this topic, Amy, and clearly we should have this conversation, in a more fulsome way, but, I love through the Hive, I've connected with multiple African founders, and what's been so interesting about so many of them is part of the reason they have decided to move into starting their own nonprofit, even though there are potentially some nonprofits doing things similar and doing some of the supports in their areas that they're looking at some of these changes that need to happen and going, but it has to come culturally from from our culture and
Mhm,
it has to meet our how our culture works. And so, but then there's the struggle with often a desire for North American donor dollars that don't necessarily, like there's that tug of war, right? Of
mhm.
get North American donors to invest here, but they want it done a different way that we know is going
Yeah.
to fail, and
Mhm,
that it won't be accepted. So it's such huge challenge. And like you said, this legacy of generations
mhm.
of colonialism in particular, like you can see, it feels like it's so long ago, but is it really?
Yeah.
It's not, right? So
Mhm.
yeah, super
One of
interesting.
the kind of key like frames for me and how I think about whether this idea is something to be invested and interrogated is, this idea of a solution looking for a problem. And
Mm,
that is what the West often does from this top down approach of, I have this project I want to implement. Let me go find a community, right? So I have a solution. I just need somebody to implement my solution
yeah.
versus that community level need assessment that's driving a solution that is appropriate to the time, the space, the funding in that particular community and that particular challenge. And this is always something I just struggle with so often in the big ones, right? The big projects and the big funders. They're like, oh, we want to do this. Well, what if nobody else wants to do
Absolutely.
that?
Yeah, does the community want the solution you're suggesting? Like that's a yeah, and something that often doesn't get asked, right? Like the people you're offering to support are not always the individuals that are being asked what solution would maybe really move the needle for them
Mhm.
long term.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, I love that. Okay, well, we have to investigate this conversation further at some point. You and I.
Obviously,
Uh,
I love this conversation, so I'm just like,
I was
"Woo, let me just talk about this a little bit."
kidding. I love it. I love it. It's so interesting. Okay, so my next question is, how does peer support
Mhm.
influence your continued success in this field? Like you've been here for a long time. How does peer support kind of factor into your connection to social impact work?
Yeah, I think as, people, and all the contours of peopleness, we need community, right? Personal, professional, wherever you're at. I feel for me in the nonprofit space, in my experience, community, peer support, spaces where you can be authentic are
Yeah.
essential to that work of dismantling some of the legacies. Right? Because where we acknowledge it or don't, or know it or don't, it exists within us, specifically as a white woman who is working internationally. It's incumbent upon me to interrogate some of those things, and it
Yeah.
is not easily done by yourself,
Yeah.
right? So having spaces to be authentic, to be vulnerable about what you're seeing and you're thinking and how you're perceiving some situations, to share the good and the bad and the everything in between, provides not just a space to discuss, but to grow, to learn, to ask challenging questions, to build reciprocity in how we do this work. And that community element is just really important, not just to kind of personal ability to do it, but I think in the quality of the work that we're trying to do.
Peer support really gives us that opportunity to stay high in quality by going,
Mhm.
what is somebody else doing? What have they
Yep.
learned that is working that I have never heard about? Every Hive chat I have like
Yeah.
3 tabs open afterwards going, here's all my things I have to check out now because,
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
people gather information differently
Mhm.
and and they have different exposures to opportunities to other people that I probably won't get to have. So I always find peer support is pretty cool.
Mhm. It expands your known universe, right? By
Absolutely.
having that system where you can have, you can be down, you can be in a difficult place, you can be frustrated, and people can say, "Ah, but what about? Have you thought about how about this approach?" And I find for me that that is always wonderful. So somebody offer me that, that 2 cents, but also I find so much more that I grow so much more in doing that with other and for other people.
Yeah.
Right? Because I interrogate my suggestions or my thoughts so much more when I'm gonna say, "What about?" to somebody else.
Yeah.
Versus like if I'm just doing it for myself, I'm like, "Yeah, this is what I do." But I gotta back this up, right? If I'm telling you, you should think about this. Oh, well, I should have some evidence. I should have some experience. I should, have some peer review for what I'm suggesting you think about, right? So you're not only providing like quality feedback for somebody else, you're doing that for yourself and reminding yourself to do that for yourself, right? Just don't go with your initial gut. Like think about it, interrogate your initial gut a little bit more.
I love how you just said that. Okay, so you've been a Hive member almost since the start. I should have pulled it up because I have those stats somewhere, but you've been a Hive member for a long time. Really appreciate you. I love that when your name comes up, I can go, oh, here's one of our international members, or here's one of our, more North American local members. And it's always a win. People always give me great feedback about their conversations with Amy, which I appreciate. So I know you're putting lots of your knowledge that you've gathered over the years into these calls. What has been like, what have you gotten out of Hive chats today?
Yeah, oh, it has been fun to be, in the loop from the kind of early stages and just to see it grow and then the enthusiasm. So part of it is, just a nice win for nonprofits, right? Like people doing this work, it's nice to see this new forum provide something for people and people engage with it. So just as like sitting on the corner and watching it grow, it's just been lovely to see it kind of take off. And congratulations to you and team for building something that does take off and does kind of capture the imagination of people. For me, I've really enjoyed having um difference. I like difference. I like change. So just going into a chat and being like, "So what do you do and what are you passionate about?" It's always fun to talk to people who are passionate about something. And I don't care what you're passionate about, right? Like I don't Star Wars not my thing, but you want to tell me about the stuff and all the things and the fight like, "Ooh, sure, just tell me all about it." It's fantastic to see your
Yeah,
enthusiasm. Right, and
yeah,
so this space is always great to see people be enthusiastic about their work, or I've had a couple where it wasn't super enthusiastic about their work, maybe a little frustrated with their work, but being able to have a conversation which they found some enthusiasm and excitement. And
yeah.
that's just lovely, right? It's half an hour and you can do something as powerful as that. That is fantastic.
Yeah.
And for me, not having to do the work is really nice, right? Being able to network and not being like, oh, I gotta find people and I gotta see if they're available. I have to schedule like that stuff is just it's a labor and not having to do that and being like, oh, I have some time Thursday morning. I'm getting in and somebody's gonna show up and we're gonna have a fantastic conversation and I did not have to do anything, which is really nice.
Sometimes it's just it feels like a lot, and I think I mean, I am even struggle with this sometimes. There's so many cool people doing cool stuff in the social impact space. You see something come across your LinkedIn and you're like, I should write that person's name down and I should send them a message later. And I'll it doesn't happen. I have a list of names that I'm never going to get to because that's not, and I just, if all of a sudden someone said to me, oh, well, we'll just put you in a call with that cool person, I'd be like, okay, well, I can make time for a cool call.
Yeah.
But that extra piece of
Hmm.
scheduling and calendars and all of that just
Hmm.
feels sometimes insurmountable when I have a busy week.
Yeah. Well, and that I think for me, and I imagine for others, there's a fear of rejection. There's imposter syndrome of why would I reach out to this person? There's all of that when you start to really like think about, oh, I gotta get to network. I gotta build this community. I gotta do all these things that then you get in your own way.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, I no, they couldn't possibly want to talk to me. I have nothing to say, right? And then come into a chat where there's somebody already scheduled for you. You don't have to think about that. You're both there for whatever that conversation will be. It is a really nice shortcut around some of those, like you just get in your own head and in your own way kind of struggles that I have. And I don't know, maybe other people have too.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely correct. And one of my recent Hive chats when I connected with someone who's actually not too far away from me, which is always cool because there's
Yeah.
always that option for maybe an in real life meetup sometime. And it was kind of similar to one of those chats you were talking about where initially the energy is really low. She's clearly having a challenging day. And getting her talking about her mission and the work that she's doing, and she's an executive director, and you could see almost like no one's asking her that often, like, about, like, the inner
Mhm.
like, "How does this work happen, and how did you get into this, and how did this go?" And for me to be able to go, "This is really cool work, like, I've never heard of anyone doing this, what an
Mhm.
interesting idea, I feel like this could be applicable there." And by the end of the call, sometimes it's also a friendly reminder that whether you're coming at this from a consultant side where you have all this different experience, but you have
Mhm.
also this resources, connections, all of those pieces, or if you're working in-house or if you're volunteering, whatever, sometimes sharing passion
Mhm.
elevates everyone's passion in the room at the same time,
Yeah.
right? Like, but we just need that reminder that
Mhm.
this work is hard, but it's also incredible. And we don't
Yeah.
often look at it and go, this is incredible.
Mhm. It can be contagious,
It can be contagious. Yes. I love
right?
that.
The
And
enthusiasm, the
it's
excitement.
a little contagious too, right? Like passion, community, peer
Mhm.
support. It's almost like the more of it that happens, it's got an expansive effect, right? And it's
Yeah.
not 1 plus 1 equals 2. It's bigger
Mhm.
than
Yeah, absolutely. I think there is, I think early days we had talked and it's like an opportunity, not an obligation, right?
that.
And I think that, that just this opportunity is bigger than it looks, just on paper,
Yeah.
right? I actually had a conversation, oh, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago with somebody I met early days in in Hive. We had a conversation and we just kind of connected on LinkedIn and we got together again, right? And
Awesome.
just had a how's things going? And that's what can be possible, which was really
Yeah.
lovely about the space you've created. So well done.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much for your continued support. Thanks for doing this with me. I love
Mm,
gathering together those original people who joined and kind of getting their story because now it's like I think we're like 8 or this is month 9 maybe and so
mhm,
it's and we're just under 1,000 members, which seems insane. And so I think it's something that continues to snowball because I think there's a deep need for connection
mhm.
that doesn't have obligation, like you noted, right? It's just an opportunity to speak about your work, to talk about the space, and but without going, oh, we have to find a solution immediately. And maybe the solutions will start to appear when we talk about it more.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thank
Thanks
you
for
so much.
inviting me. This was fun. Happy to have a conversation with you again. It's been a while, so
Yeah,
thanks for the invitation.
amazing. You're wonderful. Thanks so much, Amy. Cheers.
Thanks a lot. Bye.